"Someone shut that dog up before I lose my mind." The shout came from a weary neighbor, his voice cracking in the midnight air. But no one stepped outside. No one dared. The sound had become too haunting to confront directly. Night after night, it rose above the silence, a raw, unbroken howl spilling from the shadowed yard of the old Carter house, long abandoned, its windows like hollow eyes staring into the street. For the fifth night in a row, the cry had carried through the narrow lane, pulling restlessness into every home nearby. At first, people thought it was a stray, one of many that wandered the town's edges. But this wasn't an aimless bark or the hungry whine of a street dog. This was deeper, aching, like grief tearing through fur and bone, each rise and fall of the sound cut sharper, as though the animal were begging the darkness itself to answer. On the sixth night, when the noise began again, one person couldn't ignore it any longer. Elena Ruiz, a volunteer rescuer known for her stubborn compassion, pulled her coat tight and stepped into the chill. The neighborhood kids whispered about her, about how she never turned away from an injured animal, even when common sense told. Her, too. Tonight, her determination carried her toward the Carter house, its fence collapsed in patches, its paint peeling away like shed skin. The dog's silhouette appeared first. A German shepherd, gaunt but still holding a fierce stance, stood, rigid by the warped front porch, its head tilted skyward as another mournful howl broke loose, echoing across the empty street. When Elena approached, the dog's eyes snapped toward her, glowing faintly in the porch light's reach. There was no snarl, no bark of warning, just a low rumble, the kind that holds both fear and warning in equal measure. "Easy now," Elena murmured, her voice barely more than breath. She had faced aggressive strays before, but this wasn't the same. Something about the way the animal's ears twitched, the way its body shifted between the porch steps and the darkened door, felt protective, guarding, waiting. She noticed. The dirt matted into its fur, the stiffness in its movements as if it hadn't left that spot for days. Then came a sound she hadn't expected, a faint thump from inside the house. Quick, irregular, almost like a knock. The shepherd's ears jerked back, its gaze darting to the cracked door behind it. Another howl erupted, louder this time, not to warn her away but to call attention inward. Elena froze. The Carter house had been deserted for years. The front windows were boarded up, weeds clawed through the porch, and rumors said the last family left in a hurry, never to return. No one had lived there since, and no one dared to go near it. Yet now, in the hollow heart of that forgotten structure, something was moving. Her radio crackled at her hip. "Elena, status?" It was Miguel, another rescuer waiting in the van around the corner. She pressed the button slowly, her eyes never leaving the dog. "The shepherd's not alone. There's something inside." The words hung heavy in the air, nearly drowned out by the rising wind. She tightened her grip on the flashlight, angling its beam toward the doorway. Dust swirled in the light, disturbed by something unseen. The dog shifted aside just enough for her to notice. Deep claw marks etched into the wood, recent ones, raw splinters still hanging loose. "What have you been guarding?" she whispered, almost to herself. The shepherd's body lowered into a crouch, its head dipping, a strange mixture of trust and command, as if urging her forward. Her pulse quickened. Houses like this held too many secrets. Rats, broken floors, sometimes worse. But the dog's unrelenting cries, the marks at the door, the faint noise from within, all of it pointed to something else. Something alive. Something trapped. She stepped onto the first creaking board of the porch. The shepherd let out a single bark, sharp and desperate, before falling silent again. Inside the house, the faint thumping returned, steadier this time, accompanied by a sound that chilled her, soft, uneven breathing. Elena looked back toward the street. Every window in the neighboring homes was dark. No one wanted to see what she was about to uncover. She was alone with the dog, the house, and the unspoken weight pressing from its walls. Taking a breath, she pushed the door open. It groaned, the hinges screaming in protest, and the smell of damp rot spilled out. Her flashlight swept across the entryway, catching dust-choked air and peeling wallpaper. The shepherd stepped in beside her, close enough that she felt its flank brush her leg, its eyes locked forward as if guiding her deeper, and then, from somewhere inside that crumbling house, came the unmistakable sound of a child's cough. The beam of her flashlight trembled, the silence around them collapsing into a new, unbearable truth. The cough echoed again, soft but unmistakably human, a sound that did not belong to the rot and silence of an abandoned house. Elena's breath caught in her throat. She swung her flashlight toward the narrow hallway ahead, its peeling walls closing in like ribs around a heart. The German shepherd pressed closer, its movements deliberate, every muscle tense as though it knew precisely what lay ahead. Child inside. She whispered into the radio, her voice shaking despite the years she had spent on rescues. Miguel's reply crackled instantly. "Hold position, I'm coming in." But Elena was already moving, her boots pressing into dust that puffed upward like smoke. The urgency in that fragile cough left no room for hesitation. The beam of her flashlight swept over toppled chairs, a sagging picture frame, and the jagged hole of a broken staircase. The air grew colder as she stepped deeper, carrying with it the scent of mildew mixed with something metallic, faint but sharp. The dog's claws clicked against the warped floorboards, its low growl rippling in her ears like a warning note. Then came a sound that froze her in place, not coughing this time, but a small, muffled whimper. It came from behind a half-closed door at the end of the hallway. The shepherd surged ahead, nose to the ground, tail stiff, and pressed its shoulder against the door. The hinges resisted until the dog's weight forced it open with a scraping groan. What lay beyond made Elena's chest tighten. The flashlight beam caught a child, no older than 6, huddled beneath a torn blanket in the corner. His face was pale, streaked with dirt, his lips chapped, and his eyes widened at the sudden light. In his lap lay a bundle wrapped in a filthy cloth, twitching with the fragile movements of something alive. Elena crouched, her heart hammering. "It's okay," she whispered, steadying her voice as the boy shrank back. "I'm here to help." But the boy shook his head violently, clutching the bundle tighter, his small body curling protectively around it. The shepherd whined, lowering itself to the floor, its gaze shifting between the child and Elena as if pleading for patience. "Elena, talk to me," Miguel urged through the radio. She pressed the button, her eyes never leaving the boy. "There's a child, and something else. He's holding it, alive." The boy's whisper cracked through the silence, so faint she almost didn't hear it. "Don't take her." Her heart lurched. She leaned closer, the beam catching the bundle more clearly now. Tiny paws slipped free from the cloth. Newborn, trembling, fragile. A puppy. No, not one, but 2. Their bodies pressed together, their eyes still sealed shut. The shepherd whined again, inching toward them, its body quivering with recognition. In that moment, the puzzle reshaped itself. The dog hadn't been howling for help for itself. It had been calling for them, for the boy, for the fragile lives he was trying to protect. Elena's throat tightened. "You've done so well," she murmured, forcing calm into her voice, "but they need care. So do you." She reached slowly, her hands open, every movement careful. The boy's shoulders shook with defiance, but his eyes betrayed exhaustion. He had been alone too long, his thin frame sagging against the wall, his breaths shallow. The dog shifted again, crawling the last few inches, pressing its nose against the boy's knee. The child flinched, then hesitated, staring at the animal as though searching for reassurance. The shepherd licked his sleeve gently, its tail giving the faintest wag, and something in the boy cracked. He clutched the puppies tighter, but tears welled in his eyes, spilling down his cheeks without sound. "Elena, I'm at the porch." Miguel's voice broke through, low and urgent. "What do you want me to do?" She hesitated, knowing the wrong move could shatter the fragile trust forming in that room. "Bring a blanket and water." Slowly. Her words were deliberate, each one carrying the weight of the moment. The boy finally spoke again, barely above a whisper. "She told me not to leave. Said she'd come back." His gaze darted to the doorway, as if expecting someone to appear. Elena's chest tightened. Who had told him? Where was she? The questions pressed. Hard, but there was no time for answers yet. The boy swayed, his body weakening, and Elena realized just how close to collapse he was. The dog pressed against him again, its body firm, steady, as though lending him strength. The puppies squirmed in his arms, their cries thin and desperate. Elena reached forward, her hand brushing the edge of the filthy cloth, and this time the boy didn't pull away. His eyes searched hers with a flicker of something. Fear, yes, but also hope. From the hallway, Miguel's footsteps echoed closer, carrying with them the faint rustle of fabric and the splash of water in a bottle. The boy's gaze flickered toward the sound, then back to Elena, torn between flight and surrender. The air seemed to pause, heavy and expectant, the silence broken only by the rasp of the child's breath and the faint whimper of newborn life. Something far larger than a simple rescue was unfolding here, and Elena knew they had only just uncovered the first layer, and then, just as Miguel's shadow fell across the doorway, the floorboards above groaned, loud, heavy, distinctly human. Elena's eyes shot upward, the beam of her flashlight trembling against the ceiling. Someone else was inside the house. The coughing sound echoed again, fragile and broken, carrying through the hollow rooms like a thread unraveling in silence. Elena's chest tightened as she aimed her flashlight deeper into the abandoned house. Dust swirled around the beam, catching the glint of glass shards on the floor and the faded outlines of furniture long forgotten. The shepherd moved ahead of her, steps careful, ears forward, a sentinel leading her into the unknown. Miguel's voice crackled over the radio again, this time sharper. "Elena, what's happening? Do you need backup?" She hesitated, lowering the radio against her chest. If she called the team in too soon, the noise and movement might spook whoever, or whatever, was inside. She needed to be sure. "Stay put," she whispered, though her own voice quivered with doubt. The house seemed to breathe with her steps. Floorboards moaned under her weight, and with each sound, the shepherd glanced back at her as though to make sure she was still following. Elena's pulse raced. She knew the risks: collapsing floors, hidden intruders, even the possibility of wild animals, but something about that cough had pierced her defenses. It wasn't a sound she could ignore. Then came another noise, faint but undeniable, a scrape, like something dragging lightly across the floor. Elena swung her light toward the hallway ahead. The wallpaper peeled down in long, curling strips, shadows pooling at the far end. For a second, she saw nothing but decay. Then the beam caught movement, small, quick, retreating behind a half-open door. Her throat went dry. She edged forward, every nerve on edge, until she reached the door. The shepherd pressed close, its body tense, tail low but wagging faintly, urging her onward. Elena gripped the knob, pushed gently, and the door creaked open. The room inside was suffocating with mildew, its ceiling bowed and sagging. Against the far wall, half hidden beneath a torn blanket, was a figure, small, frail, no taller than her waist. A child, knees pulled up to the chest, arms wrapped tightly around them, eyes wide and glistening in the beam of her flashlight. Elena's heart lurched. The child blinked, flinched from the light, and raised an arm to shield their face. The shepherd whined, softly, and lowered itself to the ground, as though trying to calm the fear in the room. "It's okay," Elena whispered, crouching low, softening her tone. "I'm not here to hurt you. My name is Elena." She didn't dare move closer yet. The child's lips parted, a raspy whisper escaping. Don't let him in." Her stomach dropped. "Who?" she asked, but the child only shook their head, pulling the blanket tighter. Behind her the wind rattled through a broken window pane, and for a moment the entire house seemed to tremble. Elena forced herself to stay steady. She raised her radio again, this time with urgency. "Miguel, I need you inside. Now. There's a child." Static filled the pause before his voice returned, incredulous and sharp. "A child? In there? We're coming." As she lowered the radio, a heavy thud came from somewhere deeper in the house. Not the fragile shift of broken furniture. This was deliberate, weighted. The shepherd's head jerked up, a growl rolling low in its throat, hackles lifting along its spine. Elena's breath caught as she turned her light toward the hall. For the first time, she realized the air was no longer still. It felt charged, restless, as though something unseen was stirring awake. The child whimpered, curling tighter into the blanket. Elena forced herself to whisper again, her voice shaking. "You're safe, I promise." But the words felt too fragile against the weight of the silence that followed. The rescuer's footsteps pounded closer, boots striking against the porch outside. Relief should have flooded her, but instead the sense of dread deepened. Whoever had left this child here, or whatever had been sharing the house with them, was still near, and it was listening. The shepherd let out a sharp bark, its body angling toward the hallway, ready to defend. Elena rose, her flashlight trembling in, her hand, the child's terrified eyes still fixed on the darkness behind her. The house was no longer just a shell of the past. Something alive, something hidden, was moving in its depths. And as Miguel's voice called her name from the front door, the next sound inside the house sent a chill ripping through her spine. A slow, deliberate knock from the farthest room, echoing like a summons in the dark. The air inside the abandoned house seemed to grow heavier with every step Elena took. The flashlight beam swept across broken furniture, water stains on the walls, and long-forgotten belongings scattered like ghosts of another time. Yet none of it explained the sound she had heard, the weak cough that still echoed in her mind. The German shepherd moved ahead of her, its paws patting silently on the warped floorboards, every muscle taut with purpose. Behind her, the door creaked again, and Miguel stepped in cautiously, his radio crackling faintly. "Elena," he whispered, "we shouldn't be here without backup." But she silenced him with a glance, her eyes steady, fixed on the hallway that stretched deeper into darkness. Something was alive in this place, and she wasn't about to walk away. The sound came again, ragged breathing, followed by the scrape of something being dragged across wood. Elena's pulse raced. She tightened her grip on the flashlight and followed the noise into a narrow corridor. The shepherd darted forward, then stopped abruptly, lowering itself as if pointing her toward the end of the hall. There, a door stood half open. The faintest glow leaked from within, not electric, but the weak orange flicker of a candle. Elena approached slowly, pushing the door wider with the back of her hand. The smell hit her first, not just dampness but something sour, human, neglected. In the far corner of the room, huddled beneath a moth-eaten blanket, sat a boy no older than 7. His eyes widened against the light, pupils huge in the dimness, his lips cracked and pale. The shepherd rushed to him immediately, pressing its head into the child's lap. The boy's thin fingers clung to its fur like a lifeline. "Dear God," Miguel breathed, stepping closer. "How long has he been here?" Elena crouched, keeping her voice soft, steady. "Hey there, my name's Elena. You're safe now." But the boy didn't speak. He just stared, his body trembling, clutching the dog tighter. It was then Elena noticed the battered suitcase by his side, the corner torn open to reveal cans of food, empty, rusted, their sharp edges glinting in the candlelight. A chill rippled through her. He hadn't been squatting here for a single night. This was survival, desperate and long endured. "Elena," Miguel murmured, his tone tightening. He pointed toward the far wall, where something else caught the light. Faded photographs pinned haphazardly, faces blurred, but one stood out. A woman with tired eyes, holding the same boy years younger. A note, scrawled in shaky handwriting, lay beneath it. "If anyone finds us, don't take him away." The floor groaned above them suddenly, sharp and deliberate. Elena froze. Her eyes shot to the ceiling. The boy flinched, burying his face in the shepherd's neck. They weren't alone. Miguel's hand went instinctively to the radio, but Elena shook her head. A voice, low and uneven, drifted from the floor above. It was muttering, the words indistinct, like a chant or an argument whispered to no one. The boy's grip tightened on the dog, and a sound escaped him at last. A broken whisper. "Don't let him come." Elena's stomach nodded. Whoever him was, he was still here, and if the boy had been hiding in this place under the shepherd's guard, then the dog's relentless howls weren't cries of loss at all. They were warnings. The candle sputtered, casting the walls in jerking shadows. Miguel's face drained of color. "We need to get out, Elena. Right now." But Elena shook her head, her voice low and firm. "Not without him." Above them, the footsteps began again, slow and deliberate, moving closer to the staircase. The shepherd rose suddenly, standing between the boy and the door, its body rigid, teeth bared, a low growl vibrating through the room. The old house seemed to breathe around them, the walls pressing in with the weight of its secrets. And in that moment, Elena realized the rescue wasn't just about saving a frightened child. It was about facing whatever darkness had kept him hidden here, whatever force the dog had fought against night after night. The first step on the staircase groaned. Then another, the sound of someone descending. Elena's flashlight beam flickered. Across the boy's face, pale and terrified, and she knew the night was about to change. Whatever was coming down those stairs was the truth behind the howls, and it was far more than they had imagined. The stairwell groaned with each descending step, and the flickering candlelight painted the walls with restless shadows. Elena braced herself, keeping her body angled between the boy and the door. The German shepherd stood rigid at her side, lips peeled back, every breath a warning. Miguel's hand hovered over his radio, but the tension in his jaw showed he knew. Calling for backup too late might only escalate what was about to unfold. At last, a figure emerged at the bottom of the stairs. A man, gaunt and hollow-eyed, his movements jerky, his hair tangled as though he hadn't seen daylight in months. His clothes were torn, but his gaze was sharp, too sharp, burning with something unsteady. He stopped at the threshold, blinking. Against the flashlight's beam, and in the stillness that followed, the boy's trembling voice finally broke through. "Papa, don't." The word cut through the air like glass shattering. Elena felt her breath catch, her mind reeling. This wasn't a stranger holding the boy hostage. This was his father. The photographs on the wall, the desperate note, the suitcase filled with scavenged food, it all fit together in an instant. This man hadn't abandoned the child at all. He had been clinging to him, hiding him away from a world he no longer trusted. Elena steadied her voice. "He's weak. He needs help. Let us take him." The father shook his head violently, muttering under his breath, "They'll take him from me. They always take them." She said so. His words spiraled, tangled, between paranoia and sorrow. The boy pressed his face deeper into the dog's fur, silent tears slipping down his cheeks. Miguel took a cautious step forward, hands raised. "We're not here to take him. We're here to keep him alive." The man's shoulders sagged for a moment, as if the weight of years pressed down all at once. His eyes flicked between his son and the strangers standing in his ruined home. The shepherd growled low, the sound vibrating in the boy's lap, not at the rescuers but at the man himself, as though warning him to let go. For one long, agonizing moment, the room teetered between collapse and release. Then the boy reached out with a trembling hand. "Papa, please." Something in that plea broke the man's defiance. His knees buckled and he sank to the floor, head in his hands. The shepherd moved instantly, placing itself between the boy and his father, but the man made no attempt to rise. The fight had drained from him, leaving only the hollow shell of a man who had fought too long against shadows. Elena acted quickly, guiding the boy up into her arms. He was light, too light, his frame weakened by hunger and neglect. The shepherd pressed close, its flank brushing her leg as though tethered to the child's side. Miguel moved to secure the father, speaking softly, promising that no one would hurt him, that help was waiting outside. When they stepped out into the night air, the boy clutched the dog tightly, his face buried in its fur. Neighbors, once silent behind their windows, now watched in stunned silence as the small group emerged from the haunted shell of the Carter house. The shepherd paused on the porch, lifting its head to the sky one final time. This time, the howl it released wasn't desperate. It was sharp and commanding, a declaration that its vigil had ended. The paramedics took the boy gently, wrapping him in blankets, checking his vitals with practiced care. He never let go of the shepherd's fur, his small fist tangled in its coarse coat. And as the ambulance doors closed, the rescuers made sure the dog climbed in too, its place beside him unquestioned. Elena stood for a long moment watching the Carter house, its windows still gaping like wounds. But she knew now that the house hadn't been empty all these years. It had held fear, love twisted by desperation, and the echo of a child's survival against impossible odds. The howl that had once kept the neighborhood awake had been a cry no one wanted to hear, a warning. No one understood. But it was also a lifeline, a call that refused to be ignored. Without it, the boy would have been lost. Without it, the truth would have remained buried. As the ambulance pulled away, its sirens cutting softly into the night, Elena whispered. To herself. He wasn't calling for himself. He was calling for someone to finally listen. And with that, the street fell quiet, carrying a silence no longer heavy with dread, but with the fragile weight of something far more enduring. Hope.